Thank you to Dr. Peach for speaking with me. You can watch the entire unedited interview online on the New Mexico in Focus YouTube page. Now, as we grapple with high food costs and hold out hope for a slight reprieve from rising grocery bills, a cascading combination of economic realities and a push from our leaders to return to a pre-pandemic lifestyle is causing food insecurity to bleed into more and more households. Right now, according to the nonprofit Feeding America, 1 in 7 New Mexicans faces hunger. That number is even higher for children, with 1 in 5 lacking the resources they need to stay fully fed. It's a problem that's made the already vital community resource of food banks even more important. This week I sit down with Sonia Warwick from Roadrunner Food Bank of New Mexico to ask about the increased need they're seeing and how they're working to keep up. Sonia Warwick, thank you so much for joining me here on New Mexico in Focus.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on. We sure appreciate it and glad to be here and represent the food bank.
Absolutely. Now, we just spoke on the show to an economics professor about rising food prices, their impact on families in our state, where we're 6th in the country for highest average grocery bill for the average family. Have you seen an increase in the number of people coming to your food bank?
Yes, absolutely. You know, we definitely hear from people when we're out in the community doing food distributions that regularly report to us, like, I'm here because I can't afford food, or I'm here because I can't afford food and rent, or food and my medication, or food and other basic needs that they need access to. And it's driving lots of people back into food lines.
Have you noticed a difference in the economic stability of the people coming? I guess, in other words, are people of more means visiting your food bank trying to get help with their food?
Yeah, I think that's harder to tell, you know, because we're not always asking those kinds of questions. Sure. But in general, you know, I've met people from all walks of life, people from families to single households. We see a lot of seniors in food lines, believe it or not. And here in the state of New Mexico, really it's the 2 most vulnerable populations that we see that are benefiting from services that the food bank provides, children and seniors. So roughly 1 in 5 kids in our state is experiencing hunger. And overall, it's 1 in 7 New Mexicans who's at risk of hunger. So we know it's impacting really the most vulnerable among people that live here.
Now, what beyond rising grocery prices is contributing to that rise in the people that are going to your food bank?
Yeah, so you know, the rollback of SNAP benefits about this time last year, we definitely saw an increase as people weren't getting as much of that benefit, and they basically said, like, hey, I've had to return to charitable hunger programs because yes, I've been able to provide for my family using those SNAP benefits, and it was enough to get them in a place where they felt food secure, that they didn't have to visit charitable hunger programs. But now we see that they need both of those to make ends meet, really, in terms of the amount of meals and the food that they're putting on the table for their loved ones.
How else have operations at Roadrunner changed since the end of the pandemic? I mean, it feels like we're out of it, but now 4 years ago almost.
Yeah, definitely. Well, just like you and I are feeling that pinch at the grocery store, you know, and what we see in terms of food costs, the food bank is too. We definitely have dedicated more and more of our budget over the past few years to strictly buying food. You know, it's one way that we source food, but we also secure food donations and through other means too. And when we're spending more of our budget on that, it means that those dollars that, you know, a donor is giving to us don't go as far because costs are much higher for very basic things. And, you know, that can be anything from peanut butter, for example, to soups, a variety of different products that we've seen food increases on. And not just, you know, like 5 or 10%, sometimes as much as 60%, sometimes as much as 100% compared to even 4 years ago.
Okay. Now, you mentioned donations. Most people know that that's a big way that you guys receive food, but yes. Talk a little bit more about how you procure food.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, one of the ways that we procure food is through food purchases. We also heavily rely on donations from the community, whether that's people hosting a food drive on our behalf in their neighborhood, in their company, among friends or family. That's another source of food. But 2 also larger ways that we get food are through, one is federal. There is some federal legislation that funnels it to the state, and the state purchases that food, and then we are charged with distributing that, of course, in the state of New Mexico into several counties, or actually 16 counties. And then the other way that we secure food is through industry partners, food industry partners specifically. So, think about like a local grocery store who may not be able to sell certain products, but they still have a life to them. We pick up at their stores very often. We can bring it back to the food bank, volunteers sort that product, and then it gets added to our inventory and then dispersed out into 16 communities that we supply food to.
Now, I know this year's state budget that recently passed included some money for food procurement for organizations like yours.
Yes.
How important is that legislation?
Absolutely vital, right? Because it's strictly for food purchases. That will allow us to complement the inventory that we have on hand. It will allow us to buy product that we may not get as a typical food donation. And it lets us get a variety of different food items that can kind of help complete that meal. People who live in a food insecure situation, if they have their own food budget, they may not necessarily purchase healthier food items because they're not going to last as long. And one of the things that we distribute a significant amount of is things like fresh fruits and vegetables, for example. So having access to those kinds of funds help us complement and make the meal that we're providing to people who are food insecure more well-rounded, more healthy, with protein items and other type of foods that they need for their families to live and thrive.
Now, lastly, on food procurement for your group, I know a lot of that is also at the mercy of Congress. What do you keep an eye on in Washington each year when it comes to the budget?
Definitely right now there is legislation called the Farm Bill. It's authorized every 5 years. It really sets the spending limits, if you will, for that 5-year period for things like SNAP, for things like commodity food, for that food banks distribute, and that's really known as the Food Emergency the Emergency Food Assistance Program. I'm sorry about that. And then also a senior hunger program. And when we see fluctuations in any of those, that impacts our ability to get more food onto the plates of people who need it. So, when there's fluctuations in people's benefits on SNAP, for example, that can definitely increase the number of people attending food distributions, and also really puts stressors on food banks across the country at a time when we're trying to buy food and trying to get more pounds into our food banks to distribute to people in need. And so when we see this kind of push and pull, we always advocate to make sure the federal nutrition program part of that bill is set at a rate that makes sure people are taken care of who are low income and need that additional help.
Where do things sit right now with this year's Farm Bill?
It's kind of being under consideration. We just had some of our staff in Washington last week advocating for it. So I didn't get the latest update from them before coming here today, but I can tell you it's definitely a priority, not just for our food banks, but communities that receive the food product that we're sending to them, as well as other food banks across the country.
Okay. Now, let's take a short pause and zero in on just a definition. What is food insecurity, and what do people who are facing it have to deal with?
Of course. So, we at our food bank, we tend to use food insecurity and hunger a little bit more interchangeably. It's really a USDA term, but it basically, in the short of it, is basically saying that people don't have enough to make food possible throughout the course of a period of time, usually in the case of a month, but it could be a week, it could be over a longer period of time. So when people are facing that facing food insecurity, it means they're not able to procure enough food for their family over the course of a period of time.
Okay. Now, last year, your member organization, Feeding America, released its Map the Meal Gap 2023 report.
Yes.
That details the high rates of child hunger in our state. That's been the case for a long time now, unfortunately. What areas in New Mexico did you find were hit the hardest by child hunger?
Yes, of course. And this is a trend we have seen since that report came out many years ago, but rural hunger. We see a lot of increased hunger in rural communities. And when rural communities also face those increases, it impacts children. Some of them, as much as 30%, can be at risk of experiencing hunger in rural communities. So we know that there is more need often that happens in rural communities than necessarily urban centers or in suburban areas. That doesn't mean there isn't hunger in those areas too. It just means it's probably not quite as deep as other places that tend to have much more rural frontier-like communities that are facing that need and needing more food on the plates of the people in those areas.
Is there a roadmap for addressing the needs in those specific areas?
Yes, we definitely, at least in the last year, we have made an effort to open what we call Healthy Food Express mobile markets, and the concept really is looking at high need communities with low food access. So we operate anywhere from about 9 to 10 of those a month. There's a couple of them here in the urban centers, but most of them primarily are in places like Loving, they're in TRC, they're in Cuba, they're in Torreon, Jemez, for example. So much smaller communities with smaller populations, but may not have access to a fully functional grocery store and rely on those food distributions to make sure that those families are getting healthy food options.
Now, hunger, of course, has been an issue in New Mexico for a long time. What are we missing here, whether legislatively, philosophically within our society? Is there some change that you can imagine that would help us get our arms around this a little bit better?
Yeah, well, hunger is a symptom of poverty, right? You know, they go simultaneously. If you have high rates of poverty, you have high rates of hunger. And it means that we need to do what we have to do as a state to lift people up into that. That can be anything from making sure we're paying living wages to things like we're providing excellent education opportunities for people who are low income. And I think in a state like ours, because of our rural nature and the fact that we have such large spaces in between communities, that can be a tough thing when you're in a small town community and there may not be a lot of higher earning jobs available to you.
Sonia Warwick, thank you so much for joining me here on New Mexico in Focus.